I was speaking with a client whom I'd been working with for a long time, and we're just chatting. And then he said to me that he feels his words frustrated, disappointed with himself, because he said, in the past, I've committed to changes in my life. And he was talking specifically about lifestyle changes, somewhat about exercise, even more so around nutrition. And he says, I'm disappointed because, I've already committed and made the changes, and then I deviated from my commitment. And I didn't eat as healthfully as I wanted to for a while, and I didn't exercise as much. He also talked about meditation that he was doing, and then stopped. And he said, I'm in my he's just he's around my age. He's in his 50s, and he said, and I'm disappointed that I keep on, and we keep on talking about this. And I thought about it, and I said, the approach to change has to change. Meaning, he was talking about commitment as the path to change. And what I suggested to him is that instead of thinking about commitment as the path to change, he should think about recommitment as the path to change. Instead of commitment as the path to change, to think about recommitment as the path to change. Why? Because when we talk about commitment to change, it's a one-off event. I've committed to change. I've either succeeded or I failed. Recommitment to change is about doing it again and again, committing ourselves again and again, falling down and getting up again and again. And it's recommitment rather than commitment that is more aligned with our nature. And I say our because this is something that is universal, common to all of us. I don't know of anyone who simply commits to something or a few things and then adheres to it without fail from that point on. Once in a while, maybe it happens, rare, but that's just one thing. There are many things we commit to. Change doesn't come when there is one commitment. Change comes when there is a commitment and a recommitment and a recommitment. So, for example, let's say I'm committing to yoga 6 days a week for an hour. And I do it for 5 days, or I do it for 15 days. And then for a couple of days, I'm very busy at work and I don't have time to do it, and I stop. And then I say, enough. I'm sick of just, committing, and I'm not adhering to the commitment. I'm not living up to my expectations. I have failed. This is one approach. Another approach is, okay, I'm going to recommit because it is important for me to do yoga. So I'm recommitting and starting again. And maybe I do it for 3 months. And then we go on a family vacation and I stop. And it's very hard for me to do it again. And I say, every time I go on holiday, that spells the end of my commitment. Doesn't have to. It can spell the beginning of your recommitment. And I recommit to yoga. And I do that when I'm 20, 30, and again when I'm 50 and 70. And if we accept the fact that this is what change looks like, change doesn't look like one commitment and then you live happily ever after, or you live successfully ever after. Rather, success is about recommitting time and time again. There's a quote attributed, I don't actually know if he said it, but it's attributed to Winston Churchill. Again, one of the top choices for people making up quotes. When he allegedly said, success is not about not falling down. Success is about getting up again and again, or something to that effect. Effective change doesn't come through commitment. It comes through recommitment. This reminds me on the micro level of Mingyur Rinpoche in his book, The Joy of Living, where he talks about meditation. And he says, meditation is not about keeping focus, sustaining focus. Meditation is about returning to focus. So it's not about being focused and concentrated for 30 minutes straight, but it's about for 30 minutes going back to focus. And those of you who have already heard my lectures on the spiritual well-being, the second principle, meditation, remember perhaps that he talks about the oops moments. What are the oops moments? Every time you lose your focus and you catch yourself, you say, oops, I've lost my focus, and then you return to focus. In other words, you recommit to the present moment. So this is on the level of, a 5-minute meditation or a 30-minute meditation. The same approach, the same idea applies to much larger processes, change processes that we go through in our lives. This also reminds me of another researcher, Jeffrey Schwartz, whose work on overcoming OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is extremely important. And what he talks about there is, how do we bring about change? So let's say my OCD is that I have to check the door when they leave their house, let's say to work. They get out to their driveway, and then they have to go back and check, did I lock the door? Or they just drive and they've checked the door 3 times already. They drive and they say, oh no, I must go back, and they go back and check it. And they do it again and again, obsessively, to the point where they can't leave their home because they're constantly going back and checking. And what he talks about is, how does change happen? It doesn't happen when you one day wake up and say, I'm not going to check the door more than once anymore. I'm done with it. No. It happens by you leaving the house, and then you get the urge to go back and check the door. And instead of adhering to that change, you just wait another 5 seconds. Or you say to yourself, okay, now I'm going to listen to music. You're in the car and it calms me down. And then you persist for another 5 minutes before you go back and check, before you can't resist it anymore. But he says, every time you try to resist it, you're actually getting closer to the desired change. So it doesn't matter that you have succumbed. You haven't failed. It doesn't matter that you have succumbed. Each time you recommit, say, okay, I'm going to try again. You're actually getting closer to the successful outcome. Why? Because each time you recommit, each time you resist checking the door or washing your hands or doing whatever it is, what you're doing then is recommitting to the change and actually changing a neural pathway. And the more time you resist it, the more times you commit, the closer you get to the point where you don't need to check it every, and you can go to work and stay there for 5 hours. But it doesn't just happen one day. It happens through commitment and recommitment to the change. And it's the same when we look at research on changing lifestyle. There are many people, millions and millions of people who live healthier lifestyles today than they did 10 years ago. Whether they exercise 3 times a week and they didn't 10 years ago, or whether they don't eat sugar or only eat sugar, on the weekend, whereas before they ate it every day. Or they have introduced the, 16-8. They fast for 16 hours and they eat for 8 hours a day. Or people who've become, I don't know, vegan or paleo or whatever. And when you look at people who introduced lifestyle change, whether it's diet, whether it's exercise, whether it's meditation, what you find are not people who committed once and their life was changed overnight, but rather people who committed and then recommitted and recommitted again and continue to recommit. Because maybe now, even though they've been doing something for a year, again, they go on a vacation or they get injured or something happens and they get off track. And then they go back on track. Same one or maybe a different one. The key with people who bring about lasting change is not that they committed once and then brought about that change. It's rather that they recommitted a few times and they continue to recommit, and therefore they enjoy lasting change. Lasting change is not perfect change. There are still deviations. They still fall off the road that they're on, and that's okay. And that's what I told my client. I said to him, instead of being hard on yourself and chastising yourself and being frustrated, just recognize the fact that this is human nature. And that part of human nature is that we fall off, fall down, move away from, deviate from the straight and narrow path. It's natural. We all do it. And just like we all experience certain emotions, and hence the permission to be human, we all fall off, away from the straight and narrow, and that is part of human nature, and we need to give ourselves the permission. And then to choose to recommit. So it's not the commitment that matters, it's the recommitment that matters. First of all, being much easier on ourselves, more generous, more compassionate towards ourselves. When we deviate, when we don't adhere to the straight and narrow. And second, to then choose what we want to do. Do we want to get right back on the track again and recommit? The more times we do it, the better we are at doing it. And the more likely we are to see lasting change. Just like meditation is not about focusing, but about refocusing, regaining our concentration. So is change not about commitment, but about ongoing recommitments.